Okay, so today we are going to begin our lesson on JavaScript. And if you go to the Global Tech Mastery website, we have the JavaScript course over there, and I have put all the notes that we need here. I have to say that some of these things, I'm going to remove them. These are old tutorial that I added, but the newer tutorials, all of them are from the introduction to somewhere here, DOM manipulation. So I have a lot of stuff in here. Like you can see, these are all stuff that we're gonna go through. And then, of course, the DOM manipulation also has a lot of stuff over there. So the way we are going to do this, I have this thing called Introduction to Programming. So this is for somebody who has never coded before. And not only that, it's also for advanced people also. When you are coding, there are certain things that you need to understand. You have to know that, oh, this is what I'm doing. And when we talk about computer code, these are the properties, these are the characteristics that it has. Like if you talk about a human being, you know they have a name, they live in a house, they eat food, they do this, they do that. So when you mention computer code, also there are things that should come into your mind when you mention it. So I have put that over here. And once you have a firm understanding of this foundation, then it is easy for you to Google things. It's easy for you to learn the language because you know the things that you should learn, right? Human beings, they eat food. So if you want to study the human being, you say, oh, let me study the kind of food that they eat. Let me study the country that they come from. Let me study the language that they speak, right? For language, food, country, these are things that are related to human beings, right? And they are different depending on the kind of human being that you have. If you take somebody from America, their language is different, their food is different, even their culture is also different. So if you want to study somebody in Asia, then you know, oh, let me know what language they speak, what food, where do they live, their culture. You see what I'm talking about? So in the same way, once you mention code, there are things that should come into your mind. And I have put them over here. So it will guide you to know what to study. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. And as I go through this introduction to programming, it's going to serve as a foundation, as I said, to JavaScript. And after we finish with the introduction, then we're going to begin the JavaScript itself. So everything is going to be about JavaScript going forward. But this introduction, they are true for all programming languages. Okay, because like I said, this is the behavior of code, computer programs. So I would want us to do this like a discussion, you know. When I say code, I'm gonna expect that you guys can tell me what it is and what you think it is, and then we can just talk about it a little bit and we all can be on the same page. Like the example that I used about a human being, if I say a language, we all know what a language is, right? Language is used as a way of communication, you know, expression and all of that. So that's the way human beings use language. So as far as code is concerned, if I say a statement, what is a statement in your view? In every code, what is a statement? What is an expression? What is that? Okay, so that's the point. So we can get started. And one more thing I have to mention, if you are doing introduction to programming, you always need to have one programming language that you can use to show the examples, right? Because if I mention the concept, I may want to show an example of code that will communicate the concept. So it could have been any language, but because we are learning JavaScript, I decided to use JavaScript as our core language as we go through these concepts. And because we are doing that, we have to understand how to write JavaScript code. So I want to begin from there. As soon as we know how to write JavaScript code, then we can begin the introduction. Because if we have to test out anything, we need to write a code, right? So I have a question. If you want to write JavaScript code, how do you do it? Right. So again, I think this is a powerful question, right? Because I want to write code, but where do I begin from? Where can I write it? Right. So if you want to do some documentation, you want to write a letter or stuff like that, you can use a Microsoft Word to do it. You can use a text editor. But if I want to write JavaScript, can you guys give me ideas on how to write it? Where to begin from? Any ideas at all to write JavaScript code? Again, this is different from if you want to write Java, if you want to write C#. Every language is different in terms of the place where you can write it, right? So JavaScript, where do I write JavaScript? I have a tutorial here. So where to write JavaScript? Let me bring it up. Guys, you can interrupt me and talk, right? When I ask a question, I could continue to talk, but I'm expecting that you can interrupt me if you want to say something as well. So I want this to be the first lesson. I don't know if you guys need me to lay some foundation about JavaScript. I believe we're going to get to it because we are doing introduction to programming, right? So if you want to write JavaScript, the browser console is one of the places where you can do it. So if I say browser console, do you guys know where that is? If you just inspect the page, you can see there's something called console over here. You go there, here, you can write JavaScript code here.
I didn't see where you pointed to. Where is the console?
So you go into any browser and you just right click on anywhere on it and you can see inspect. Inspection allows you to inspect the code behind the browser. So if you click on it, there's all these powerful things that are available to us. We can do amazing things here. You can see this is the CSS code and all of that the page is using. Like if I remove this, you can see things are changing on the page. If I remove this, you can see the font size is also changing. So this is the see. So this is Google, but just by taking away some of this code, suddenly a lot of things are happening. A lot of things are changing on the page. So we call it developer tools. Developer tools. So developers are the ones that care about what happens at the back of any page that they go to. And they go there, inspection, they go to the back of the page. So I'm just doing it again. And there are many things developers can do here, many, many things. And one of them is the console. See these elements, it sounds like HTML, right? So because it is HTML. So any HTML that is on this page, you can see it under the elements. You see the head tag, the body, and all the HTML you can find here. But if you go to the next tab, console, you don't see anything here. So to do any form of JavaScript, this is where you're going to be coming a lot. So we can write code in the console. So I can quickly write one code for you to see, console.log. If you want to print something in JavaScript, this is how you do it, console.log. So console, we are in the console, and then log means record something, right? So console.log, you can say, hello there. If I hit enter, see, it just created the output for me. So in coding, there is this thing called input. You enter something in the computer, and then it gives you an output, right? So this is an output. So all I'm saying is that if you want to write JavaScript, you can come in the console and do it. That's one way of doing it. So let's look at the other way of doing it. It's good to have this in knowledge because you can sometimes one of them would work better than the other, depending on your situation, right? So let's look at this other ways. So the browser console, any browser pretty much has this. So some of the browsers, they give you more information at the back than others. Like Google Chrome, a lot of developers love it because if you go to the back, it gives you a lot of amazing things that you can use to inspect your page and to make changes to the site. We're gonna study all of this as we keep going. In my job as a developer, I have seen all of this pretty much. I have gone to application and read some information from there that were useful for my software and all of that. So that's that. Now let's go to the next one. Sorry for going back to it. So you can write JavaScript in HTML5. HTML. You know, the three of them go together: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So now I want to demonstrate how that is done. You have a HTML document, and then you can put JavaScript in there. So let me demonstrate. I'd like to demonstrate this. So, because we're doing JavaScript right now, I kind of want to create a whole new folder for JavaScript. Let me see the best way I can do that. I mean, I can navigate. I'm gonna navigate to the folder we have here, this folder. There is something I want to do that I need to kind of go there on the computer. So test VS Code. The name is very off. So I just want to copy everything here. I want to, I'm using Mac, so it's like I'm copying, but what I really want to do is cut. So Mac, even if you want to cut, you have to copy first. And you guys are not using Mac, so there's no need for me to even show that yet. So I'll create one new folder and say previous work, HTML and CSS. So now that I have this, I want to paste here, but I don't want to just paste. I want to move. So what I'm doing is on the Mac, there's something called option. If you click on it, you see that this one changes to move. If I don't press on the option, it says paste. So copy and paste. But if I want to move it, you press the options and then you click on the move. So once I do it like that, you can see everything has been moved. So now if we go back to where we were, all our previous work is in here. You can see them there. But I just want to create a new location for JavaScript. So let's say JavaScript. Just to stay a little bit organized, JavaScript. So .html. So this one doesn't make sense at all. JavaScript.html. If you write a JavaScript code, a file that is going to contain JavaScript, you have to put, do you guys know the extension for that?
Yes.
Okay, so let me say day one. If I want to put HTML code in this file, so this is a folder, it should be a file. Sorry, guys. So I think we need a folder first, and then we can have a folder like this, and in there we can add a file. So we can say day one dot. If I want to put HTML code in here, what should be the extension?
HTML.
HTML, thank you. Okay, if I want to put CSS in here, what should be the extension?
CSS.
Star.css. Yes, that's good. Now you can see the identity of the file is changing based on the extension. Now, if you want to put JavaScript here, you have to say JS.
Yes.
JS, JavaScript. Okay, so we say that you can write JavaScript in an HTML document. So we just need an HTML document. And then we just want a boilerplate, right? This is the boilerplate of any HTML document. So here, one more question. If you want to put CSS code here, what do? You need this tag, right? Style. You need a style tag. And over here, you can put CSS code here, right?
Mhm.
So we did that many times. So right now, if you want to put JavaScript code in an HTML, instead of using the style, you have to use something called script. So it's a tag, script tag. So as soon as the code sees this tag, anything you put in here is going to be JavaScript. It has to be JavaScript. Otherwise, there will be an error. So let's just print something to the console, console.log. And then we can say, hello there. So if I save this, I have my JavaScript here. If I save this and we go in the browser, I mean, we inspect this page. So right now, this is Firefox. It's not Google Chrome. So we don't have anything on the page, right? See, the body of the document has no element. So that is why you don't see anything. But it doesn't matter. We just want to inspect it and check the console because we put some JavaScript code over there. So if you go to the console, you can see that the code that we put out here is printing down there. Do you guys understand what I just did? See, I put console.log. This one means that print something for me. In every language, again, that is different. In C#, you're gonna say what? Console.write, write line and all. And then here you say console.log. In Python, you say print, and then in C#, you're gonna say cout, and then this. So this same syntax over here is different in every language. So that is the beauty of programming. So now, but at the end of the day, you are doing the same thing, you are printing. So yeah, so that's that. This is one way of writing the JavaScript. And people say that don't put your JavaScript code in the head tag. Even though you can put it there, they prefer to put it at the very bottom of the body tag. I mean, it does the same thing anyway. So if you refresh, it's still working. But if I say the bottom of the body, what I mean is that if you have any element on the page, say a div, you have a div, hello, and you may have an image tag, and it could be pointing somewhere. All the stuff that you have on this page, they should be on top, and then you put the script tag at the bottom of the page. So you want the HTML to load, everything on the page to load before the code is loading. Because they said that if you don't do it that way, it can create some problems for you. We might understand that in detail as we go on. So now we have two ways of writing JavaScript code. So let's go back to the third. The third one says external JavaScript file, external. So this one is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll demonstrate it because it's key. The same thing as CSS. CSS code, we put it at the head. For CSS, you have to put it at the head section. I don't know if you have to press it back. So, but you can also create an external file. Let's put it in this folder. We have to make sure we are in that folder. So you can say style.css, right? I'm using the CSS as an example because we are used to that. And then in your document, you just need a link tag. Then you point to the style.css like this. So if you create this linkage, then you can put all your CSS code in here, and then they're going to be available to this document, right? We know that. So we are saying that you can do the same thing for JavaScript also. Normally they call it main.js. So you can create another file over here, and then you can put all your JavaScript in there, console.log. and then just print hello there. Okay, so you save it. If you want that to be available, you can remove the script tag here. You have to create a link. So you're just gonna say link. And then this time, I don't think it's a style sheet. What should this be? The relationship, let me see, there's a script. So script. I guess I'm using a script. I'm guessing that that's what it should be, but main.js. So you just create a link to the file. That's all we are doing. Let's now go and refresh. Oh, sorry. Let me. Yeah, I see it. This is the place. If I refresh this, so it's now working, right? So I guess let's remove the relationship. Is even a I'm thinking 1 second. This is not how you do it. I think you create a script tag and then you point it to this. Let's see. Did I cover that in the tutorial? Maybe I didn't cover it. Oh, I did. Yeah. So see, it's supposed to be a script, and then the source will point to your file. So guys, this is what we call the syntax, right? You want to master the syntax. But if you don't know the syntax, don't worry. You can always look it up. You just have to know what you're doing. So you have to still create the script tag, and then there is a source attribute. So it doesn't resemble the way we do it in CSS at all. It's completely different. So we are calling our file main.js. So sometimes people call it script.js also. So once we do this though, then it's going to work. We inspect it to see the JavaScript all the time. So in the console, now you have that, right? You guys understand why we have this in the console? So one thing that I'm planning to do for you guys is give you time to also practice things as I do them. But we'll probably get to that. Because I just like to just show everything, and then I believe that you guys would practice at home and come to me if you have problems. But I'm not sure if you get a chance to do it, so I don't know. Yeah, so once you do this, your code is going to be more cleaner, right? Because you don't put everything in one file. You only put HTML over here, and then you put all the CSS here. Okay. Oh, no, all the JavaScript. And then CSS you can put on the other file also. But it doesn't matter because you've already linked all of them to the HTML. These three things, they go together, man. Once you know these three things, you are becoming a pro in web development, because essentially you are a master, man. You can do a lot of things. So that's that. I just wanted to show that. Let's go back to, so there is other ways of writing code. You can, these ones I'll teach you guys later on, but they have code editors online that you can just use, just write code in there and execute. Repolate is a very famous one. So you can just go to Repolate. A lot of interviews, that's where they will take you. So Repolate is it's an IDE on the cloud where you can write code. So you come here, you may have to sign up. Yeah, you have to sign up. I already have an account. You log into it. And then, you're going to see a place where you can write code. Do you guys want me to show you, or I don't think it's necessary? Right. So, if you don't have VS Code installed locally, you can just come here and write all your code. There are many types of developments that happen over here, even if you want to do blockchain development. So this is slow. I bet you guys can do this. So for now, we're going to stop here and continue with go to the introduction, because I think we have enough to get started. Later on, I'll demonstrate how to do the point number 4. I'll demonstrate that later on. That's fine for one time. So yeah. So this one, you just create a JavaScript file and put your code over there, and you do it in the console. You do everything in the console. One second, because while we are there, it's all right to finish it. It looks like, say ls. See, computer is slowing down a little bit because I went to replicate. Let me remove it from there. I can remove this too. And okay, cd JavaScript mode. Okay, so let me demonstrate the 4th one, which is very, very powerful. So this one here allows you to write JavaScript just by itself, right? You don't need to connect it to anything. You can just write JavaScript code just by itself. So the way you do it, you just create a file and, JavaScript file like this. Now you put all your code in there. So now in the terminal here, you have to navigate. Let me clear and show you. We are in the JavaScript folder here. So you can do ls to see all the files over there. You can see all the 3 files here. If you want to execute JavaScript code, you have to say node. You begin with node. The keyword is node. Then the name of the file. If you hit enter, it's going to execute everything that is in there. And see, it is printing hello there for us. Right? So depending on the project that you are doing, sometimes you don't even need the browser at all. You can do everything here locally. But JavaScript is so powerful. You can do amazing things with it, guys. And I'm excited that I'm able to help you learn JavaScript, right? This will change your life forever. Any job that you do in the tech space, the knowledge of these things would help you. Even if you don't do coding, this knowledge will still help you, because you're gonna understand a lot of things. Okay, so with that, we know the point number 4. We just did it. You can write your code anywhere. We are using VS Code. Sublime Text is another IDE that you can use. And of course, online code editors. I demonstrated Replit, JS Fiddle, CodePen. These are all places you can write code on the internet. You don't need to have IDE locally on your computer. It's already in the cloud. Just go there and write your code. You can save your files also over there, so you can go back to it and use it. So Node.js environment. This is usually for backend development, right? When you're doing backend development and other things, point number 6 is there. So guys, I've shown you all the places where you can write JavaScript code. So do you guys have any questions?
No.
Thank you. So let's go get started with the introduction to programming. Because I could have gone straight into JavaScript, but I want us to master the introduction first. And then once we get to JavaScript, then it will be easy because we've seen all the concepts. Make sure you understand these things. Don't say I will learn it later on. If you understand something, it's hard to forget it, right? So try to understand it here by asking questions. And then, so we are going to code. That's the first thing, code, computer programs. There's something called code. What is a code? Let's go into it and see. So you can see that the site is pretty slow, but I guess it's because I have these tabs opened. They seem to consume a lot of resources. Okay. So when we talk about computer code, what is your understanding of computer code? It's a question for you guys. if we say this is a computer code, what is your understanding of this term?
It's kind of like, well, from what I kind of learned from the other class, it's kind of like writing something that the computer can understand, like from high level to low level.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's good. Yes, that's true. So you're trying to give instructions to the computer, right? So that the computer can execute them for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the high level is a technical term, which means that we don't want to control the memory. We don't want to. So there's high level programming language and there's a lower level programming language. So lower level, they are telling the computer how to store the variables, and they do a lot of things. With the lower level, you have to tell the computer a lot of things. But with the high level programming languages, you don't tell a lot to the computer. The computer does a lot for you. Like you create a variable, if you don't need it anymore, the computer will delete it. You don't have to delete it yourself. But if in the lower level languages, you have to say, oh, at this point of the code, this variable, I don't need it, so remove it. So that one is like C programming language is like that. Even C++ also is a lower level. It's high level, but you also do a lot of lower level stuff. They call it memory management. You manage the memory, right? So high level, JavaScript is a high level language. So there are certain things that you don't do, the computer will do for you, which is good. Yeah, so that is the high level. I just wanted to explain that part. So we also learned that when you write code, you are writing it in a way that we understand, human beings understand, but the computer doesn't understand the code that way. It has to be translated into another form, machine language. The computer understands the machine language, right? So there is a code that human beings understand, but the computer doesn't understand it. And there is a code that the computer understands, and then human beings, we have trouble understanding. So what we do is you write it in the way that a human being understands it, but you need to have it in the way that the computer understands it if you want the computer to do what you told it to do, right? So how do we do it? Between the code that a human being understands, which we call human readable language code, and the machine readable code, what is in the middle? There is something in the middle, right? So the human understands this code, but the computer doesn't. Computer understands it. Human beings, they have trouble understanding. So you have to do what? What do we do? How do we manage these two complications? So there is something called compiling, right? Compiling the code. Compilation of the code means that you are taking the code from the state in which the human being understands it, and you're translating it into another version that the computer understands, right? So that's why when you write your code, you have to click on compile. In some languages, there is something called compile. You click on it, and then it will take you from the human readable to machine readable. Only then can the machine do what you want it to do. So this is a basic concept, but do we understand this?
Yes.
Guys, thank you, Afi.
Yeah.
This is a basic thing. Don't think it's complicated, right? The whole idea of coding, you are telling the computer to do something, right? But the language that the computer understands, human beings, we find it difficult to understand it also. So they allow us to write code that we understand and we can easily write, but the computer doesn't. Then there is something in the middle that would take our code and translate it into the one that the computer understands. And then the computer can do what we told it to do. So we don't lose anything, right? So that's a key thing to know. Like anytime you are writing code, know that. But even if you don't know it, it doesn't matter. You can still write code. But maybe as a developer, your friends will be having the conversation and then they'll be using the terms, compiling code, and you don't know it. It's a bad thing. It looks very bad. So now, what are the properties of computer code? Like when we mention computer code, what should come into your mind? There is something called the syntax. So syntax is, what is the syntax, guys? Tell me. What is the syntax of the code?
It says right there, each programming language has its own syntax rules that define how code should be structured.
So thank you. You don't even need to read it. I want us to, if you can tell me in your own understanding, what is the syntax of a language? In your own understanding.
The way things are done on the specific program. Example, there's a way you say like print out thing in Java is different from C# like that.
Yes. So
like the principle.
You were breaking. Could you say that again, please?
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I said it's like a principle of writing a program into a specific program. The way you do output in Java is different from C#, is different from other.
Yes. So like English, the way you write English language is different from the way you write French.
Yeah.
Right? But you're doing the same thing. If you want to say hello in French, is what? Bonjour.
Bonjour. Yeah.
English is hello. So you can say, how are you? French, you have to say, comment tu vas? But what is how are you in French? Comment ça va? Comment ça va? Comment ça va? Yeah. So it's the same thing, just that it's different. The way you say it is different in different languages. So the syntax is the hello versus bonjour, right? So now JavaScript, you're going to see that things are done differently from the way they are done in C#. But you're doing essentially the same thing, but you're doing it differently most of the time, okay? But that's the syntax of a language. So there's something called statements. There are statements, computer languages, they have something called statements. They all have it, right? There are statements in every language. So what do you understand by a statement? When we say computer code statement, what is that? Try to think in your mind and see if you can explain it in your own words. I don't mind if you read this and tell me, but try to understand it and let me know what you think about that. So, of course, we have a whole section dedicated to statements and expressions. So, but it is something we must know. Okay, so as you know, code is made up of a set of instructions that you are telling the computer to perform. The instructions are given to the computer one at a time. One at a time. So one complete instruction is called a statement. Like if you look at the way we entered the console.log, that's a complete instruction. Computer understands exactly what you want it to do if you put it like, it's a complete statement. So that is a statement. Normally in many languages, at the end of a statement, you have to put semicolon. Then we know that one statement is done. So in a typical, every code is composed of many, many statements, right? And each of the statements is telling the computer to perform a specific action. And the way you can think about it, if somebody wants to cook, you can say the first thing you should do, go to the market. The second thing, buy the things that you need for the cooking. The next thing, come back home and then go to the kitchen and cook, right? So each of these things that you're doing are all going to be like a statement in the code. And so the computer will follow the same process that you tell it to do, right? So those are statements, and we're going to see them. So what is variables? In every language, there is this idea of variables. What do you understand by that?
It's to like store data if you need it, or like a memory storage.
So it's to store data for usage in the code, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So a variable is a storage location for your data. So I'm going to make a big statement right now. I know we're going to get to it, but in every programming language, when you're writing code, what you're doing is that you are managing data. It's just you are managing data. That's all you're doing. So if I say you are managing data, what is data to you in coding? In computer language, if I say data, what is it? What do you guys understand by data? Data can be the name of somebody. It can be what? Name, we just mentioned name. It could be yes or no responses from someone. It can also be a list of things. So data, there are different types of data that you work with in the code. But programming is all about the data that you have and the way you are managing the data to get what you want. That's all. So I hope that as we go down, I will be able to make you guys understand this very, very well. So, because coding is all about the data. And so there's this whole concept called data structure. Data structure. So data structures is one of the most important things you have to know if you want to be a good programmer. So data structure, there are two things that you need to know if you want to be a good programmer. Guys, only two things. One of them is data structures, and the other one is algorithms. You guys, have you heard about algorithms before?
Yes.
Yes. So anytime you are coding, you have to remember there are two major things I need to know: data structures and then algorithms. So if you want to work at Google, if you want to work at Facebook, there is a whole interview that is called data structures and algorithms interview. And it's the most difficult interview ever. If you don't go through that interview, you are not getting the job. You will not even be, you have to go through that first. If you pass, only then they're going to talk to you in person. So a lot of programmers, they don't want to work for big companies because they can't, they say we don't have time to study the data structures and algorithms. If you don't study them, you cannot pass. So now what is a data structure? Data structure is talking about the data. What is the structure of the data? Structure means the way, the form of the data. So now let me give you some examples. If I ask you, are you happy? You can say yes or no, right? So yes or no versus are you happy? And you say I am happy. See, I am happy. It's different from yes or no, right? So if you say yes or no, in computer language, we call that Boolean. You're giving me a Boolean data. So I can ask a question in the code. Are you happy? And then you respond and say, yes. So you're giving me a Boolean answer. So in the code, I have to know that this data that I got is a Boolean. So the Boolean will dictate what I do with that data. Once you give me that data and I know it is a Boolean, then I know what to do with it. Because now I know the structure of that data as a Boolean. And if it is Boolean, then maybe I can use it in this way or that way. Like if somebody says yes, and I take that yes from the person, I cannot add yes to yes. You cannot be adding yes and yes. It doesn't make sense because you cannot add Boolean values. But if you ask somebody, how old are you? And they give you a number, say 20. 20 is it's an integer. But to be specific, 20 is a number. So once you have a number, you can do mathematical operations on it, right? You cannot do mathematical operations on, say, true or false, for instance. So whatever you do in the code depends on the data that you got, the structure of the data. Okay, so now I ask you, how much money do you have? This guy says, I have $1,000. The other person says, I have $500. Now I can say, oh, they are giving me numbers, and these numbers mean money. So if I want to know, we have two people in the room, the total amount of money that we have, I just sum the two. I can sum them up, right? Because they gave me numbers, so I can sum them. But then if I ask a question, give me the names of students in this class, the names of students. Remember names, right? So it's gonna be Afanawe, Justina, Ibrahim. You're giving me 3 things. So now this is what we call collection of things. If I ask you, give me one name, then you just give me Afanawe, it's one name. So it's a string. And so character, like alphabets, we have characters, right? We know what character is. Like A is one character, B is a character. If you combine multiple characters, then you have a string of characters. But that becomes a string. We call it a string in computer language. The data type is a string. So a string, like, is something you can mention, like a name of somebody, like Afanawe. But now it's a string, right? So you can store that as a string. And you can do things, you can do string manipulations on it. So if you have a data structure that is a string, what are the things you can do to it? You can do something called concatenation. And concatenation means that, let's say Afanawe gives me her first name. So first name, Afanawe. And I say, what is your last name? So last name, Dente. So if I want to form the full name of Afanawe, I can do something called concatenation, which means I can join the two strings together. So I can have Afanawe Dente. And when I'm adding them, I also have to put a space in between them if I want to make sense. Because if you just add the first and the second name, you're going to have Afanawe Dente. They will be combined together as one string. You don't want that. You need to put a space between them so that it will make sense to a human being when they read. So again, there are different data types, and I think we're gonna get to it, but in every code, all that you're doing is you are manipulating data. So the name of one person is just one string, a string like that. But if you give me the names of everybody in the class, then you have a collection of names. So that is where we have array. Arrays will come into play, or a list. You're gonna have list of people. So now the way you work with lists is also different, because maybe I want to know the first person. So I have to use indexes to locate. So if the name of the list is, say, array, I can say list at index 0 to get the first person's name, index 1, index 2. So coding is not hard if you understand what we are saying, that everything depends on the data structure. And there are advanced data structures as we keep going. And your ability to be comfortable with these data structures is 50% of the job. And then the other 50% is the algorithm. The algorithm is the way you do things, right? If I ask you, give me the total income of students in this class. I'm asking you to give me the total income of students in this class. So how are you going to do that? The how, that is the algorithm. The algorithm, the way you can do it and get the answer, that is the algorithm. And that one is the thinking part of the game. So coding is, or a lot of it is in your mind, right? So we have two types of errors in code. We can have the syntax error. Like if you want to write console.log and you make a mistake, that's a syntax error. But if you have written the code and there is no mistake in the syntax, and the code doesn't do what you want, then there is a logical error. There is a problem with the way you did it. The logic doesn't work. So the logical error is the most difficult error that you can fix in coding, logic, because you are trying to find the total income, but you are ending up with something else instead of the total income. So if I ask a question, how can we find the total income of students in this class? What is the first thing you're going to do?
How many students are in the class?
Sorry?
I said to identify how many students are in the class.
Perfect. That's a good way. It makes sense to me. So the first thing, how many students are there? Okay, now you know the number of students. Now, what is the next? What is the next logical thing a human being would do? Because normally, the way human beings would do it, most of the time is very similar to how the computer would do it also. That's the magic, right? So you have the number of students. What else do you need to be able to identify this?
You're going to ask for their income separately.
Okay.
So if you have the income
of each of them,
each of them, then you're going to perform an operation by summing them together.
Summing them together.
So then you get your result.
Then you get your result. That's it, right? So now there are three people. If you want to ask the income of every person, so you can need some looping, right? You have to loop through the list of all the students, and each of them you ask for their income. And then when they give it to you, you add that value to your sum, your variable that is summing them. So yeah, that's the algorithm. The way you articulated it, that's the algorithm. And the most important thing is if it can be coded, which it can, because as I'm talking to you, I already have the answer in my brain if I'm to code this, right? But let's just keep going. I'm giving you guys information here to help you not be scared of coding, okay? And data structures and algorithms. And there are techniques that we can give you that it will be very easy for you to master the algorithm part of things, right? The way you, there are a few problems that we can solve, and then any other problem that you have, you're gonna combine the techniques that you used in some of the problems we did, and then you can solve it. Like, because you need a few techniques, then you keep reusing those techniques. And then, you know, yeah. So that is that information, very crucial. Now can we talk about control structures in coding? What do you guys understand by control structures? You see, some of these things are also here. So once we talk about them here, we might not even really spend time here much, because you can read it when you go home. And I spent a lot of time to put this together. So if you read it, I think you'll get value out of it. Just the introduction, okay? So there's something called control structures. What is it in coding? And we skip the comments. What is comments to you in coding?
Comment is like an explanation.
So comment is a statement in the code that you don't want the computer to read, right? You want the computer to skip
documentation.
it. Documentation of the code is just for you to understand what the code does, right? It's not for the computer to run. So in every language, this is there. So like in JavaScript, the question is, how do we write comments in JavaScript? How do we do this? We're gonna look at all of that. So that is a comment. So comment is things you write in the code that you don't want the computer to read. It's just for you, the human being, to understand the code. Because sometimes you write the code, you come back the next day and you don't know what you did. You forgot. So if you have a comment over there, it's easier to remember what you did there instead of trying to read the code to understand it. So let's go to control structures. What is control structures?
It's like a flow, the programming flows, like a flow chart. It's the same thing as algorithm too, how you itemize your program.
How you itemize your program. Yes, that's a very good explanation. So you guys, you have to always remember that the code, the computer is going to begin at the top and it's going to execute every statement that you give it, right? Every statement you give, it's going to execute, and then it will be going down like that. So sometimes you want to make a decision in the code. So you can ask a question in the code. Are you happy? If the person say yes, you want to say, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you for taking my course. If the person say no, you want to say something else. You want to tell them, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. What can I do to make this experience better, right? So depending on what you get, you want to do something different. So the way to do that is what we call control structures. You're controlling which way the code should go. So there are two ways of doing it. We have loops, we have conditionals. So conditionals are ways for you to make a decision based on something, based on the value of a variable. So now when we're talking about a variable, you are thinking of it as a place where you store the data. So if you want the data, you call the name of the variable, and then it will give you the data. So whatever value, as the code is going, your variables can be changing. You can start with something and then you keep changing it as the code is ongoing. Because remember, you are manipulating the data and you're doing it in a very intelligent way to get what you want. That's all you're doing. So you're gonna see, it's very interesting. So now you read the variable, and if you can say, if the value of this variable is yes, then do this, else do this. So there are different ways of doing that. So all the point here is that conditionals allow you to make a decision in the code and decide which line of code to do next or something like that. So we're going to see how to do that exactly very soon. So loops, what is a loop? If I say loop, like if you have to explain this one to a non-technical person, what are you going to say?
Something that is repeatedly printing ballots, true?
Yeah, that's fine. What you said is right, but you can be more specific and explain what a loop is. Like if I ask what is a language in the context of human beings, you're gonna say, oh, languages are used to communicate. And you are sure that's what they do. So a loop in coding, you gave me an example of loop, but I don't think you told me what a loop is.
A response.
Is it like a repeated use?
Repeated use is a good one. So there is a section of code that you want to keep doing over and over again. So then you have, that's a loop. You want to keep doing it over and over again, then it's a loop. And let me give a typical example. The question of finding out the income of students in this class. You can take the first student, half an hour, and then you ask, what is your annual income? She gives it to you, you write it down. Then you go to the next person, Ibrahim. What is your annual income? He gives it to you, you write it down. You go to the next person. You can see that you are asking the same question to every student. And when they give the income, you do the same thing, you write it down. So there is a loop happening. The thing that you're doing to half an hour, you're doing the same thing to every other student in the class. So that is a loop. You're doing one thing as many times as there are students. So you write one code, and then you just do the looping, and then every time you're looping, you're changing something. You're changing just one thing about it. You are just changing the name of the student. So you can see there is a list with the names of students in it. And then now you are saying, you are looping through the list. So for every student, you are asking the person, what is your name? What is your income? Then they give it to you, you write it down. I mean, you can put it in a list also. Once they give it to you, you can append it to a list. Or you can do whatever you want with it. But the only thing you're changing is the student. So you can say, but we're gonna discuss that. But looping, don't worry about how it works. We do it later on. A code that you're gonna keep doing over and over again, then you want to put it as a loop so that you don't repeat yourself a lot. Code reuse. Does that make sense? Or it doesn't make sense?
It makes sense.
Yeah. Anytime you find yourself doing one thing over and over again, you want to do it as a loop because it will save you a lot of time. Imagine there are 10 students in this class and you're asking everybody, what is your income? So when you're asking, you're writing code, right? So you're going to repeat yourself a lot of times. You can just do that in a loop, and then it's just one statement. And then every time you just change the student, and then you get what you want. You're going to see how that works, right? Computer languages allow you to do that. They give you ways and means of doing that. So that will be the loops. Of course, conditionals we talk about if you want to make a decision in code. Should I go here or there? Yes or no? That's conditions. Because in human languages, we encounter this also all the time. You know, you want to do something provided a certain condition is met first. So coding allows you to do that. So guys, so this is all there is to coding. There isn't much. It's not like coding is very complicated. It's not. These are the few principles that we use to do coding. So we just keep reusing these principles over and over again. So there is another thing called functions and methods. So what is a function and what is a method? Can you guys help me? Justina, you know, some of my students here, they've done C#. So they understand some of these things also. So I don't know, Justina, have you done any programming before?
No.
Oh, okay. So this is your first time. It's all right. Don't worry. Once we start doing it, you'll be, you know. But I'm sure Afanawa and Ibrahim, they are familiar with some of these things. So what is functions?
I think functions is like organized reusable code that is used to perform a single function. It's used to perform a single action, like a loop. But this is in bunch, not single thing. Do you get what I'm saying? Like a code to ask for how somebody is feeling, then from there it can go to other process. Like, oh, how are you feeling today? You say, fine. Oh, Ibrahim. Okay, sorry. Maybe you ask for your name. What is your name? My name is Ibrahim. Then it's hard. How are you feeling today? I'm fine. Then it said, oh, Ibrahim, thanks, you are fine today. You know, it has used a string and it has used a loop for asking such question. So it can ask another person like that. That's a function.
That's good. Thank you. Afanawa, you want to try too? That's a good one. Because I want to be sure that we know the difference between functions and loops also. But they are also, there is a part of it that are similar, but they are different. So, what is a function? So, I can help. So, a function is, say you have a line of code, not just one line of code. You have code that does a particular thing, right? A code that does a particular thing. And this thing is something that you're gonna need all the time, right? So you don't want, if this thing is something that you're gonna need all the time or quite frequently, then you can put it into a function, and then anytime you need that thing, you call the name of the function, and the function will do the work for you, like exactly as Ibrahim was explaining. So I want to try to give a relatable example. Say if somebody is cooking, before you cook, you have to go to the market and sometimes buy the things that you need for the cooking. And you know, yeah, you go to the market and buy the things that you need. So going to the market is something that you do a lot. Let's say anytime you cook, you have to go to the market to buy the things that you need. So the going to the market involves a series of actions that you have to do. Maybe you have to get in your car, you have to drive there, you check whether you have gas and all of that, and everything is fine. You drive to the store, and then you have to know where you're going and all of that, you know. And then you do the shopping and you bring it home. Anytime you're cooking, you have to do the same thing. So you don't want to, the code that goes to the market and do the shopping, you can put it in a function and give it a name. Give it a name, and then you can, once you give it a name, anytime you have to go to the market, you can just call the function that goes to the market and do all the shopping for you. But when you're going to the market, maybe the things that you're buying today could be different from the things that you're buying tomorrow. So these ones are called parameters. So the function, you can also give it parameters and say, oh, you can call the function go to market, and then you can tell it what it should buy. All you have to do is to mention the things that you want it to buy, and then it will go to the market and buy them and bring you. You don't have to know how it is going to the market and the way it is even doing the shopping. You've already coded all of that in the function. The function will handle all of that for you. So again, that was a bad example. It's too long. So let me give another example that is easy, maybe easily relatable. Let's say you want to sum two numbers, right? You have two numbers, A and B, and you want to sum them. And this is something that you do a lot. So you can create a function and call it sum. Sum. So sum will take the two numbers that you have, A and B, and then it will return the sum of the numbers. So anytime you have two numbers that you want to sum, you just call your function, and then you pass the two numbers, and it will give you the sum of the two numbers. You don't have to say A plus B, because the way to do the summation is already in the function. The function will do all that for you. So functions are very, very important, right? They allow you to automate things. You are automating things. So when you think about functions, think about automation also. The things that you do over and over again, put it in a function. That function will do it. Anytime you call the function, it will do that for you. You don't have to write the whole code again. So, I mean, we use functions all the time, everywhere. In programming, functions, they're going to be your friend. So don't worry, you see how it is done when we get to it. But what is a method, though? What is a method? Can you see that method and functions are the same? The only difference is that methods, they use them with classes. So in object-oriented programming, if you have a function that is defined at a class level, then we call it a method. In JavaScript, there's something called objects. So at the object level, if you define a function over there in an object, then that's a method. You don't call it a function, you call it a method, but it's the same concept, the same concept. Don't worry, once we get to JavaScript, you guys will understand it. I promise you to, I mean, you're gonna appreciate it. Even Justina, trust me, you would. So the way we are going about this, we are going from the very beginning. You know, I'm not acting like anybody understands coding. I'm just introducing all the things that go with coding. Computer languages, if you see computer program, you can be looking for what are the functions in this code. You can be looking for the functions. You can say, oh, are there any conditionals in this code? Oh, what are the variables? What are the statements? You can literally ask these questions and check the code and see them. So libraries and framework. Libraries and frameworks. This is another thing that goes with coding. And so what is a library, right? Library is a code that somebody has already written for you. All you have to do is to just use them. They have written a lot of functions. You just call the name of the function and then it will do something for you, right? So like I told you, functions are there to automate things. So maybe in your code, you want to do something that has been automated somewhere. So you just, libraries give you the ability to just bring the file that contains the code in your code. Then you can start using the functions that that person has written. You could have also written it, right? So mostly, you know, yeah, something like that's the concept. And again, when we start doing it, it will be easier for you guys to understand. But what is indentation? When we say indentation, is this something that you guys know? Have you heard about it before? In the context of coding?
No.
Indentation, okay. Ibrahim, have you heard about this before?
Well, I think I forgot. I've heard about it.
Yeah, so it's one of the things that you can never forget going forward, because coding, it's an important property of coding. Every programming language is the way you indent your code. So indentation is the way you space out the code in such a way that it will make sense to the human eye. And let me find examples here. Say, let's go to loops. I have code written. Most of them. If there is a loop, for instance, see, this is pretty slow, but we'll get there, guys, don't worry. So indentation is very important, especially in Python. Python, if you don't do proper indentation, your code is not going to work. Like, look at this code. This is a while loop. So there are different types of loops. As I said, depending on what you're doing, you're going to need a different type of loop. You don't need to invent it. It's already there. All you have to know is that, oh, this problem that I'm solving is a loop problem. Then you're, oh, what type of loop would work for me? And then it's easy to figure these things out just by asking yourself these questions. So like, look at this while loop. The code begins with a while over here. And then we have this bracket. Then there is a curly bracket that opens and closes. See, this console.log, why didn't we put it at the beginning of why didn't we align it with a while? We could have started it from here too, but we didn't. We put some space here first before we started. This one makes it easy for you to read the code, right? You can see it's easy to read. While, and there's a condition here. If this condition is true, then you keep doing what is in here. So if you just, instead of putting some space here, you just write it on the same, you begin it from the very, if you begin from the same place where we are beginning the while, then that's a very bad code. You can't even read. It will be very difficult to read the code if you do that. So what is indentation? Indentation is spacing. The space that we put here at the line before we started writing, that is indentation. See, count, we could have started from here, but we put some space over there. We call it indentation. We are spacing out, putting some spaces, you know, before the code to make it easier for you to read. So if you look at this code, you can see it's easy for me, it's very easy for me to read. But if I didn't put any spaces here, then it would be very hard. Like, everything will look very ugly. right? And I mean, maybe I can even put this in our code here. So we can put it in the main file here. This is code, just copy and paste it, right? See, the IDEs, they help you with the indentation sometimes. And see, usually you hit tab, it's a tab space, tab, right? So I'm putting spaces here like this. This is a variable and it's storing an object. You guys don't know. So we talked about variable, right? It's a place where you store data. So what data do you want to store here? We want to store this data there. But we're gonna go through that maybe today. So now there is a loop, a for loop. It's looping through these variables, and for everything in there, it is printing it, right? But see, this is bad code. The for loop should begin from here. So if you put a tab here, what I'm doing is called indentation, right? I'm trying to make the code more readable, right? So that's what we mean by indentation. And I have to say that in Python, every line of code, the way you indent it is very important. Otherwise, the code will not work. Like if you write this code in Python, instead of hitting the tab, if you just do a space, say 2 spaces like this. And let me even be truthful. Let me just use the for loop. So for loop, Python will begin from here, the for, and then the next lines, you have to put a tab space here. That's how you tell Python that. Also, something else is missing here. See this, we open the braces, we have to. So yeah, if you make mistakes, it will tell you, right? So it's just the syntax. So now what I'm trying to say is that I know we are not doing Python, but if you write code like this in Python, it's not gonna work. You need to indent the code properly. They are expecting a tab space here. And instead of you to do a tab space, if you just do 2 spaces like this, also it's not going to work in Python. So one thing that you can remember is that a tab space is the same as how many spaces? 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. That will give you the same amount of space as a tab, right? So indentation allows you to organize the code in a way that is readable to the eye. Do you understand that? That's the point that I want to make. Of course, if we execute this code, it will do what we told it to do. But do we know what we told it to do? Not yet, but I know it. So don't worry, we'll get to it. Coding is very fun. You're just doing basic things, but it will do amazing things in the end if you know what you're doing. That's all. So you shouldn't be scared of coding. So again, we are just doing the introduction here, guys, trying to make you guys aware of what is out there. So hopefully we can write some code, hopefully. Because I could have easily demonstrated what we are saying too, but I think it would have taken a long time. Okay, so that is indentation. Don't forget indentation. So proper indentation is crucial for maintaining the readability of code. If you don't indent it well, it's hard to read the code. So version control, this is high level stuff, but it's very important, right? Do you guys know what a version control is?
No.
Yeah, so I guess I can try to explain it. So this one I know Justina would also know it because she's doing DevOps, and in DevOps, this is one of the important things they do. So version control, one of them, there is a whole application. There are different applications that are used for version control. One of them is called Git. The other one is TFS, Team Foundations Server, TFS. So what this one does is that if you work in a typical company, all of you are working on the same software. So we are all working on the same software at the same time. So the way it works is that I pull the software to my local computer. Everybody will clone the software on their local computer and they're gonna work on it, right? So when I clone the software, I have a version of the software. If I keep adding code into the software, I'm creating different versions of the software because I'm adding new things to the software, right? So whatever new code that I add to the software, when I finish, I have to push it back so that other developers can also pull it into their local code. So the way this works is that it's a team. Remember, software development is done as a team, and they are all developing the same software. So the beginning process, you all clone the software locally, and then say everybody's making changes, but let's just assume that I'm the only person making changes. So if I make any changes to the code, I make the code do more things than it is doing before, or there is a bug in the code that I fix, I have to push the code back to the centralized location so that other team members can also get the latest code. The latest is important. So that's the latest code. So there's something called pool. So they will pool it and then they will get my changes also on their computer. So a lot of changes are happening to the code. When I make a change, I push it there. Other people are making changes, they also push it. And the changes, they have to be merged into one because it is the same software. So this is creating different versions of the software. Because when I make change and I push it in, Git is gonna make sure that it will record all the changes that I made so that somebody can look at the history and see that, oh, Evans made changes this day, and this is the changes that he made. In case the software breaks after my change, right? There is something called, what's the word even? Let me see if the software breaks after my code, they can reverse the code. There is something they can do to remove my code from it, and then they will get the old version of the code that was working. So the version control allows you to recover from problems if they happen. I'm trying to think about the keyword here. So like, you understand what I'm saying, right? You get the code, you make changes, and you push the changes on there. So what if the changes, when they go, they are causing problems? They can revert the code back to what it used to be. Because there is this thing called versions. They keep saving different versions of the code. Every change that you make, they save it separately. If Ibrahim is making a change, they will save his changes separately, but they will still merge everything together. So Afnawa makes a change, they will add her changes to the code, but somehow they are also saving the version of the software that Afnawa brought. They also had a version of the software that before Afnawa's changes were added, so that if her changes cause a mistake, the key word is roll back. You roll back the code, rolling the code back to a previous version of the code. So version control, that is what version control is. And it's very, very, very important. And a lot of things happen there. And the DevOps, they learn it. And most of them, that's all they do for a job, managing different versions of the code and software, right? And I mean, of course they do. That's one of the key things that DevOps they do. And in software development also, we need to understand the way the version control works, because you're always working with it. Once you make changes, you have to push your changes back. And then the next day you get the latest. And then you keep making changes and then you push it. If you keep doing that and your current code doesn't work and you are not able to fix it, you can also go back to an earlier version. You can go back to an earlier version of the code that works. So GitHub is an important skill to have, how to use GitHub. In almost all my interviews, they ask me, do you know how to use GitHub? And I told them, yes, I do. And sometimes they will ask you to prove it. See, if you come here, these are some of the projects that we worked on. So once you write your code, you have to push the code here. See, this is the code. See, these changes were added 7 months ago. If we push another change over here, it's also going to record it. And all that it is doing is keeping track of different versions of the code, so that if you want to go back, you can do it. So that's version control. I know I made it too long, but hopefully you guys understand it. Don't worry. As we keep going, we're going to get to a point where we're going to be using Git ourselves. And I'm sure, the backend engineers are the ones that normally, which you guys, you're going to become familiar with it, right? So essentially you're tracking changes of code over time. Yeah, so now we can move to debugging if there is no questions on version control. Debugging. When we say debugging, what is debugging?
So if there's something wrong with the code, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So that if there's something wrong with the code, is this the point where you could use a breakpoint and see what's going on so you can debug it?
Perfect. Exactly. So when there's something wrong with the code, you say that there's a bug in the code. So debugging means that you are trying to remove a bug. So debugging is the most important skill that a programmer should have. When the code doesn't work, your ability to tell why it doesn't work. Because or your ability to find out the part of the code that is not working and that is breaking the whole software, right? So that is debugging. And majority of what we do in a day, we are debugging code, debugging. For writing code, making mistakes is extremely normal. We make mistakes thousands of times. But once you make the mistake, you have introduced a bug. Can you find the bug? That's the thing. And like Afanawa said, there are techniques for debugging the code. There are ways and means in which you can trace any bug in your code. So one of the ways is to just put breakpoints in the code and then inspect your values and stuff like that. We're going to learn the techniques, but the way you are debugging, depending on the type of coding that you're doing and the type of language, the techniques for debugging can be different. Techniques for debugging can be different. So JavaScript code, debugging JavaScript is different from the way you debug C# or other languages. And that is because of the environment in which you write the code, So you have to use some printing. You can print out some values and look at them to see what they are, and then it will give you an idea of why your code is not working. So there are some techniques, but I have to tell you that this is the most important skill of the programmer. If you don't know how to debug, you're going to be very frustrated. But if you know how to debug your code, you will save yourself a lot of headache. So one important thing you can do is how to debug, say, JavaScript code. It's a good question to ask YouTube and try to get the knowledge of. But don't worry, as we keep going, I'll be using the same techniques, because as I make mistakes, I'll be using techniques to find my mistakes. And I want to repeat that the way you are debugging JavaScript code is different from the way you debug C# or Python, or, the backend languages, mostly they have similar approaches, right? But JavaScript, that is in the browser, so it's completely different. Most of the time, it's not always in the browser. I showed you that you can write it just in the IDE alone also. So but the way you debug it can be different. Right now, I'm putting a breakpoint here. Let's see if it will hit it even. It didn't hit the breakpoint. You see, I put it there, but it didn't hit it. So the way you debug Python code is different. JavaScript, sorry, is different. But we're gonna learn all of that as we go. But do you guys understand the idea of debugging? Debugging. Don't forget these terms. You can't forget them. It's like saying that you understand a human being, and then they say, tell me the food that he eats. And you say, what is the meaning of food? I don't know what food is. That means that you are not serious, right? You can't claim to know something about human beings and you don't even know the meaning of food. And debugging is a term that they throw around in the industry. Oh, I'm gonna debug the code and see. Oh, you don't know how to debug? Oh, a lot of programmers don't know how to debug. That's why they face problems. This is something you're gonna hear a lot. Once you can debug your code, man, half of your problems is solved. But once you are able to trace the error, it's easy to fix it. But if you don't know how to trace it, then how do you fix it, right? So that's the problem. And in an industry that are several lines of code, so you have to know the debugging skills. And they are not hard, you know, as you practice, you learn them as well. So we talked about compilation and interpretation. These are the last key things I want to mention. And guys, look, there are only 11 techniques here. If you can make it a point to understand them to the point where you speak about them with confidence, then you're beginning to become a good programmer. Trust me. So compilation, we talked about compilation, right, at the beginning. And then interpretation. Of course, there is another place where we just talk about that alone. Once we get there, we will speed through it. And so now, what is compilation? Can somebody remind us what it means to compile a code? So when I
translated
please go ahead, sorry.
To translate it from what you understand, language that you understand to what the computer understands.
Perfect. So is the translation of the code from human readable to computer readable, machine readable. And that's binary code, right? So that's compiling. When I first learned coding, the professor said, compile the code, compile it. And you didn't know what I was doing. I would try to run the code without compiling it, and it wouldn't work. So certain languages, you have to click compile first, and then you're gonna click on run or execute. So, but in C#, once you click on run, it's gonna compile it for you at the back. So you don't need to compile it before you do it, you know. But compiling is what it is. You have, before the computer can do the code, it has to convert it into machine readable, and then it will now do what you are telling it to do. So the other way is interpretation of the code. So there are two things, right? Compiling and interpretation. So you can see the compiling, it will take all the code that you have written, convert all of it into machine readable language, and then it will execute it. But interpretation, it doesn't do that. It will interpret the code line by line. It doesn't compile the code first. It will just interpret the lines of code as it goes. So again, when you talk about compilation, you can also think about it this way. After it converts the code into machine readable, it will create another file and put the machine readable version of the code over there. So once you run the code, it's not compiling it again because it has already finished the compilation. It's just going to execute the machine readable, which is already compiled. The only time it's going to compile again is if you make changes to the code. Then it doesn't know the changes. It has to translate them also before it can compile, it can run. But interpretation, it just goes line by line. Every time you execute the code, it will start from the top and then it will execute the lines line by line. So guys, now JavaScript, is it a compilation language or interpretation language? Or is it interpreted language or compiled language? That's a key question. So people would ask you, oh, this language, is it interpreted or is it compiled? Compilation. Because every language is either one or the other, right? So we know C# is a compilation language, so you compile it before you run. So what is JavaScript? JavaScript is interpreted language. That is what a lot of people believe it is. But now, when I was preparing the notes, they are saying that JavaScript is not interpreted language, but it is in the middle. It is both compilation and interpretation, which is tricky. I don't even know how that's possible. So they are saying that before the code runs, it will compile the whole code and then it will interpret it line by line. So that doesn't make sense, but it turned out that it's possible. So like what I mean is over here, before this code is going to run, this is the command to run the code, this one, it will pick the whole code and compile it. And then it will now start going line by line and interpret it as well. So normally when the code is interpreting line by line, what it means is that the code can start from here, and then when it gets to this line, you can even change the content of this. While the code is running, you can stop the code here, change this content, and it will pick it up. It will pick the latest change, because at the end of the day, it doesn't even know what this is because it's not there yet. So once it gets here, it will interpret it, then it will come. If it gets to this line, it will interpret it like that. So that's interpretation. But compilation is different. It will take everything on the file and know all of it, and then it will run it at one time. Right. So guys, this is it's pretty low level stuff. Like some of the things that computer is doing for you, you don't even need to understand it. But again, when developers are talking, if you understand this, it will help you, right? And of course, sometimes if you want to do the DevOps also, then it will help you also. If it is a compilation language, you have to look at, you see the files that you have written, and you're going to see the machine readable files also. So sometimes you just want to move the machine readable files to other environment. You don't want to move the code itself because it's of no use to the computer anyways. So again, there are different environments for coding. There is an environment where developers are coding. There is another environment where testers are testing the code. There is another environment that is called the production environment. So the production environment, that is where customers are using the code, the software that you have created. And in the production environment, you don't really want to have the human readable code there because it's of no use. It's only the computer, right? So computer is just send the machine readable version of the code. Just give it to the computer, and then the computer will do its job for the customers. So that being said, this is the foundation of every computer language, and they all have these properties. And if you can understand how they work, then you can be sure that you have the knowledge of programming. There is no loophole in your thinking. So now I want to finish this, and I'll just step through it very fast because we already understand them. Then we will finish. So I think today is just going to be the introduction. And then when we come back, we're going to do JavaScript only. So this is a statement, right? We talked about what it is. If you have a line of code like this, how do you interpret it, right? This is one statement to the code. So this time I'm just gonna type it here, guys. I'm gonna type it here so we see it. Let me remove this. I'm also being cognizant of the time, right? What time did we start?
11.
So it's been 2 hours. Hey, I cannot believe it. It's been 2 hours already. Like, it's so unbelievable. So, Justina, in the past, when we come together, sometimes we go 3 hours, you know, because I know people here, they just want to get a job right away.
Oh,
Yeah.
like Sunday, it's 3 hours. It's gonna fast for it.
Sundays, on Sundays. So, like right now, what time do you go to the church?
Like right now, I have to go take a shower and get ready to go.
To go.
It's like,
Okay. So, Justina would have to go to church, and we've also exhausted 2 hours, which is pretty solid. I'm thinking if I can just speed through this, and then I can count on you guys to read it. Justina, can we have a few minutes, or maybe we can just record and then you can watch the end of it when you come back?
yeah, I can stay until.
Okay, yeah. So let's just speak through this. For we already understand the concepts, right? So this is a statement, and I'm saying that we all know what a statement is. It's one instruction to tell the computer to do something, right? So this one here, A equals B times 7. This is an instruction, okay? And what does it do? In this instruction, there is, how many variables are there? 2, right? There are 2 variables here, A and B. Is this a good code or not? This is not a good code because we don't know what B is, right? We need to define this variable. So there's something called definition of variables. So in JavaScript, you can use var to define the variable. You can set it to 0 at the beginning. This is initializing the variable. But A, you are using A, and A is not defined. So you have to also define it. Allows you to create a space in the computer's memory to store. So you create a space in the memory where you're going to store your variable, your data. Sorry. So there's the variable, and the variable they store data. So right now I'm storing a number in this place. I can make this 7. So I'm creating a space in the computer's memory, and I'm calling it B, and I want to store a number there. So now I'm also saying, give me another place in the memory that is going to store this expression. So this is an expression here, B times 7. It's going to evaluate to a value. Going to evaluate to a value. So, so now this code looks good, and we can do whatever we want to do with A. I can just choose to print A, console.log A. Let's see if this would work. But mostly this one has to be a string, but let's see if it's gonna work. So I can see right now I'm doing a lot of things. I'm just gonna execute it in the terminal here because it's easier and faster for me. So it's printing A for me, you see? So I'm saying that B is 7, and then here there is an expression. So expressions and statements, they are different, right? So this is just an expression, it's not a statement. The whole statement is this. So statements are made up of what? Expressions. So B times 7, so B is 7, 7 by 7 is what? 49. So, and I'm storing that 49 in A, and then I'm printing that A here. Do you guys understand what this is? So now, Tina, I'm thinking this is the only thing I will teach, and then we'll continue the rest later on. Because I think there is a lot of things I want to drive home, because I don't just want to finish the coding. I want to make sure you understand it. Otherwise, you can't code, you know? You can't code, and you need to be able to code without being scared of what you're doing, right? So I want to recap what we've just done here. This will be the only thing we'll do today, and I will leave you guys. And you can go to the website to read about, I have examples there that you can practice. And then when we get together, it's going to be hands-on, right? Going forward. So there is a variable. You need to tell the variable, right? You need to declare the variable. So declaration of the variable is this keyword here. And then if you assign a data to the variable, then that is called initialization. If you do it at the same time, this is called initialization. I mean, it's also a keyword that we must know. And if you don't do it this way and you just declare the variable, say variable C, all that you're doing is that, oh, I want a place in the computer memory called C. You have the place, but there's nothing there. So next line, if you say C equals, you put, say, 10 over there. Here you are doing assignment. You're doing an assignment. Assignment means that you are assigning a value to something, to a variable. And guys, remember, coding is all about the data. Everything we do depends on the data. Right now, I'm adding a number to this location. Because I'm having a number, I can multiply, I can do multiplication on them. If I don't put a number here and I do this, say love, I can put anything, I can save anything here. So now this thing, let's see what we get if we execute this. It is still giving us 79. Why is it giving us 49? Why is this 49? Oh, yeah. So guys, why is this 49? Can somebody explain it? What is happening? See, I'm very comfortable executing my code in the browser. Okay, that's why I'm just using it. So this code here, if I execute, is giving me an answer of 49. Can somebody explain why it's printing 49 here?
Because we declare our variable initially is an int, it's a number, not a character.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Our B is a number, and it's 7.
Yes.
So, and then why did we get 49 here?
Okay. No,
You
because
times it?
the code. Sorry, go ahead, Afana.
I'm sorry, did you times it? Can you go on?
You can mention the lines too, right? You can use the lines.
Okay, so B is 7, so B times 7. 7 times 7 is 49.
Yeah. And what did I do with 7 times 7? I'm storing it in what variable? A.
A.
And so if I'm
Also, when you put the A in there, it prints out the
value of 49.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's perfect. Can you begin from the top and interpret this code for me once again? With confidence. There's no guesses here. There's no guesses. And yeah, can you try again? Mm-hmm.
So line 1, we have the variable B, which is equal to 7. And then when you go to line 6, we're saying that A equals 7 times 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then line 8, the console, which is the one that's supposed to print it out.
Mm-hmm.
We have A in the parentheses. So since A is going to equals 47, 49 is going to print out 49.
Okay. So what did we do to C? Here, what are we doing to C? We are declaring C, and here we are assigning something to C. But did we do anything with it?
No, we didn't print anything out for that.
Yes.
So we change the line A. Probably if you change the A to C, then it's going to print.
Yeah, so here if I say A equals C, what am I going to get in the console?
It's going to print out love.
Let's see that. It's going to print out love, yes. So guys, one key thing here, in C#, look at what we are doing. This A here is storing a number, right? Now, currently, I'm also assigning a string to it. C is a string. Can I assign a string to a number variable?
No.
So in C#, you can't. C# you can't, because in C#, when you're declaring the variable, you have to tell us what type of data it is going to store. So that's the last point I want to mention, guys. So let me give an example. You can say in C#, if you say, mostly you're gonna say int, say my var, my variable, and you can assign a number to it. This. Here we are not writing C# code. That's why we are getting an error. So you are saying that this container, this variable, is of type int. In other words, the only integers, you can only assign integers to that variable. So if you go ahead and now you say my var, see the name of the variable, you can choose any name you want. So that's one thing about coding too. So here, if I go back and say assign var to love, this is not gonna work because this location can only store numbers, not strings, right? That is in C#. So, but in JavaScript, it's not like that. The container is just, so my JS variable. The container is just a place to store something. You can store anything you want over there. So anything you want, you can put in the container. It's a very different concept. So now here, if you come back and say my JS variable is equal to love, sorry. Remember, if you want to write a string, you have to put it in quotations. These are things I will have to go through with you guys. This is the basic of the basics. Once you get them, then you will not be scared of programming again. So now here, this variable in JavaScript can store anything you put in it. So now if I put love, which is a string, into variable, now this variable becomes a place where strings are stored, right? If I go to the next line and then the same variable, I store an integer. So JavaScript, we don't really say integer, we just say a number. So the data types in JavaScript is simplified for you. For integers, decimal, float, all of them are numbers, right? So if I want to store a number, you can just type the number 10. So this line of code is also valid because this container can store anything, and I'm choosing to store a number over there. So in the biggest point I want to mention is that in other languages like C#, we look at the type of the variable. That's what we look at. But in JavaScript, we look at the type of the data. Sorry, guys. See, this is my own information, so you make it a comment. The way you write comments in JavaScript is the // It is the same as C# also, so just do this. Then there will not be error. Once you do this, you are telling computer, don't care. This is for me. It's not for you. So in C#, you have the type of the variable. And then in JavaScript, you talk about the type of the data. So whichever one is better than the other, I don't know, and I don't even want to know. But essentially, so in a language where you are looking at the type of the variable, when you're declaring the variable, which is a place where you're going to store data, you say this variable should store numbers. So that tomorrow, if you try to put something that is not a number in the variable, it will yell at you. You're going to have a problem. Or the location is only there for numbers, not for other types, other data types. But in JavaScript, they don't care about the type of the location. So declare the location and you can put anything you want over there. You can put a number, you can put a string. Then the type of data you put in the variable is what gives identity to the variable. So JavaScript, I think that one gives you a lot of flexibilities. But in coding, if you have a lot of flexibilities, it's not good because then you can make more mistakes. In coding, you don't want to have a lot of possibilities. You always want to be restricted. So this one, they call it static typing, static typing. See, static means that you declare the type of the variable and it is going to be like that forever. It doesn't change, right? But look at the JavaScript. You don't have any type for the variable. So the type of the variable depends on what you assign to it. So this is what? Dynamic typing. And dynamic typing gives you a lot of flexibility, and flexibilities, you are supposed to be wary of them. Because if you are not careful with flexibility, you can hurt yourself as time goes on. So I wanted to make that point. And essentially, Tina, are you still here?
Yeah.
You are still here. So Tina, can you explain this code one time and then I will let you guys go? And I don't want to, you know, keep you too much. If you see this code here, do you understand this a little bit, Tina? Just in the context of what we've said today, that coding is all about data, right? And the data, you have to store it somewhere so that you can use it if you need it. So you always put the data there and then you manipulate the data to get what you want. So data manipulation, you can add to it, you can divide it, you can square the number, you just manipulate. So what we are doing here, we are creating variables and we are putting data into them and then we are manipulating the data. That's what we are doing. So I'm gonna remove these things here. So like if you look at this code, what can you explain this one? What do you think this line of code is doing?
Well, I remember that the variable B was 7 and then A was also 7. So when you multiplied it together, you got 49 in the
in the console.
Yeah, in the console. And something about container. I didn't hear everything. But and then I remember that static, you want your code to always be static as opposed to dynamic, because if you have too much flexibility, you can make both mistakes. So static is more restrictive and it's better. But the actual, like, what is this, container? Or no, I don't know what it's called.
Container variable. That's the variable.
Yes.
Yeah, which is go ahead.
No, it's okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, so the variable is one of the key tenets of computer languages, right? So, you know, we went through the things that every computer language is supposed to have. The variable is one of them. So again, think of it like human beings and eating. We are inseparable. In the same way, computers are inseparable from variables, right? Because everything begins with a variable, and which is nothing but the location in the computer's memory to store something. So here we are hard coding this number 7, but in a typical software, this number will come from the database. When it comes here, we need to assign it to a place so that we can work with it. So all I'm doing is that to code, you always begin with a variable. Coding always begins with a variable. So let me create a variable, and then you create your variable C. This is how you create it. And when you're creating the variable, the word is, what is the word? Declare. I want to declare a variable. And these key terms, you have to use them. You declare the variable means I want to declare a place, and the name of the variable, you choose it. It's up to you. Computer doesn't care. And now you are saying, oh, what is the point of variable? It is to store data. So now you are storing a data, you are storing love. This is data, right? Do you agree that this is data? Because again, sorry?
No, I just said yes.
Yes, love. So what type of data could this be? Love could be name of a person, right? And what else can love be? It could be emotions. It could be something. This is data. Data is day-to-day things. like, let's look at the number 7 here. Do you agree that number 7 is data?
Yes.
And why? What can 7 mean in the normal sense of the word? What can it be? It could be the age of somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be the number of days in the week.
Yes. Yep.
It could be a lot of things. So this is a data that means a lot of things, right? And in the software, it will mean the same thing, depending on what you're doing. If you are programming about days in the week, you can have 7 here, which is the total number of days in the week. And then you can do a logic over here and count. Say, let me do that quickly. So let's say you are writing code about days in the week, and then somebody, days in the week, how many days? We have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's a collection. It's not one day. So you have to create a variable that's going to be array. I'll teach all that, don't worry, later on. So array is a list of things. So this is how we do it. So you need this bracket here. That means that you're creating an array. Like I'm saying, everything is the data. It depends on the data. So here, the first day is Monday. So Monday is a string. So you put it in quotation marks. What is the next? Tuesday. I'm just demonstrating. There are many things I need to say to make our life very easy. And this one goes up to say Sunday. I'm just putting the dot here for now. It's not a good syntax. So Sunday. If I do this. So in programming, this data could be coming from somewhere. I could ask the students, people to enter the days in the week. When they enter them, and I have this. Now I can check the count. There is a way to count the number of items in this list. So because this is an array, there is a method that is available called count. You can say array.count. In JavaScript, .count. So this one is going to give me the number of items in the list. So I can check. I can say, if I want to check if this number is 7, because I know there are 7 days in the week. So if array.count is equal to b, then I can console.log. I can just do something, say you are correct. Else, I can say try again. There are many things you can do. It depends on what you're doing. Coding is very intuitive. There's nothing abstract about it. You are coding what human beings do on a daily basis. Let me just put not here, not correct. So see, this variable, I can put 7 here. I can hard code 7 here. But this is a bad way of writing code, because what if tomorrow the number of days in the week is not 7 anymore, it's 8? Then you have to come back in the code and change this one to 8. If you used it somewhere else again, then you have to go there also to change it. So we don't want that. So we want to store the number 7 in a variable, b, up here. And then we're going to keep using the b. But again, this b has no meaning. In an industry, you don't name variables like this, because if you say b equals 7, we don't know what b means. You have to say, so when you're naming variables, make the names make sense. We don't care if the name of the variable is long. It doesn't matter. It just has to make sense. You can say days. So you have to say number of days in a week. Then you set it to 7. So now in your code, you can now say array.count is equal to this. If this is, so here, this type of equal sign, use that. You have to use the double equal sign, because here you are comparing 2 numbers. You are not assigning 2 numbers. I have a lot to teach you guys. That's why I feel like we should stop, because once you have these things covered, then coding is not something you panic. You can just start doing it and be sure that you're doing the right thing, or you can look it up and get it. and you know exactly what to look at, right? So here, I know even this count here, what is happening? There is a method called, there's a function called count that is defined at a class level, because arrays are classes. Classes, they have methods. So the method name is count. If you call count, it's going to return the sum of the numbers in here. We're going to know all these things, how they work. So now there's conditional statement. If array.count is equal to 7, then you can, so let me just make it 3 like this. Console.log that else that. So now let me, if I try to execute this code, yeah, there's an error, and array.count is not a method. It's not a function. Okay, so let's remove this and see, maybe this is what they want. I'll explain if this works, then I'll explain why that is. So here you can clear. When we get serious, I probably will not type the code in the terminal. So see, you are not correct. So this code is working. This code is working. But there is another bug. So variable A equals B. So what is the B? Do we still have B? See, in this code, we don't have B anymore, right? See, coding is so powerful that you don't have to be scared. Just read the errors you get. Look at this line of code here. We are saying that A equals B times 7. If you look at the top here, do we have B anywhere? So the variable B is not declared, but you are using it. It doesn't work like that. So it's telling you that B is not defined. You haven't defined it. So before you can use anything, you have to define it. So you can say var B equals anything, 5. So 5 by 7. Now this would work. This would work. But the top part of the code is working, but this side broke, and it gave you all this scary thing, but he's just warning you that you made a mistake. So right now we didn't make any mistake. Everything is working. See, this whole code is outputting this, and all that is happening. If I have to explain this, I'm creating a variable called number of days in the week, and I know the answer is 7, so I put 7 there. And I'm assigning, so I have to use one equal sign. Now, I'm also creating an array which contains a list of things. And again, this array is not good. I can call it, what is this? This is days of the week, right? So call the variable properly. Say days in a week. So now you can say, now you are counting it. You are counting how many days were given to you. And you're saying that if the count is not equal to the number of days in the week, then this is not days in the week. Because if it was days in the week, it would be 7, right? So you are printing that. Else means that if this is not true, then print this. So this is conditionals. And I know we need time for me to make sure you guys understand this to the point where you will never forget it. So right now, look, if I change this to 3, what do you think is going to print? This is probably the last question, and I will leave you guys alone. Oh, so the timing, guys, the time. I think we are mistaken, man. I thought it's 2 o'clock, but it's actually 1:30. So we have time. At least we have 30 minutes more. We haven't finished an hour, 2 hours yet. Wow, that's good to know, guys. We do have 30 minutes. So let's not.
Do more than 2 hours.
Sorry?
You said 2 hours. We've done more than 2 hours.
Yeah, we have done more than 2 hours.
Oh, wow. So it's actually 2 hours, 30 minutes. I see now. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I miscounted. Oh gosh, I'm so excited about this, but it doesn't matter. We need to respect the time too. So let's just conclude this and then we go, okay? You see what I did? I'm changing the number of days in a week to 3. It's possible maybe we leave America or we leave Earth and we go to another planet. A number of days of the week is 3 over there. You use 3 over here. So what is going to be the output of this code? You guys tell me and then I'll let you go. And I want to make sure we all understand it. Then I let you go. You can just read the code out in a way that makes sense to you. And then convince yourself that this is what it's going to do. Anyone can try. Or you want me to lead? Okay, I'll lead. So the line number 1, what are we doing? Speak in computer terms. We are initializing a variable. What is the name of the variable? Guys, are you still here?
Number of days in a week.
Number of days in the week, that's the name of the variable. And what data did we give to it? Did we assign to it?
3.
3. So now we go to the line number 3. What are we doing? We are doing the same thing. We are initializing an array. And what is we are initializing a variable that is going to store arrays. So actually, let's not say that. We are initializing another variable. And what is the name of that variable?
Is in the week.
And then we are deciding to assign an array to it. So, and this array is made up of what? A list of the days in the week. So it's not 1, it has to be more. So now what are we doing at the line 7? I'm saying that this variable, because it is storing array, which is a collection of things, there is something called count. If you call it, it's going to give me the number of items in the array, right? So I'm calling that here. So what do you think this will give me? This will give me, what will I get for this?
You get 3.
Yes, days in a week dot count will give me 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so number of days, if it is equal to number of days in a week, what is number of days in a week? 3. So do you think this and this will be equal?
Yeah.
So this is comparison. Are they the same? Yes. If it is yes, so the condition as the way it was, if this condition is yes, then do the top. If not, if this condition is false, then do what is at the bottom, right? So because this is true, it's going to print this, right? That's it. And it's going to skip this line because this is conditional. Then now what are we doing here? We are declaring, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said it yet. Are we initializing a variable or declaring?
Let's declare.
Yeah. So, and here, what are we doing? We are assigning a value to it. Okay, so here, what are we doing? Here, what are we doing? No, we are initializing variable b and assigning a value 5. Because we are doing the declare and the assignment on the same line, use the initialization keyword. Yeah. It's key. If you can master these key terms, it means a lot. So now I'm initializing a variable b to 5. You can also say like that. So what am I doing here? I'm also initializing a variable a to b times 5. And what does this mean? What does this line mean? If the program is doing this, what is it going to do? It's going to go to the variable b and see whatever value is there, and it will pick it and multiply that by 7. Whatever it gets, it will assign it to a. So here we are saying a equals c. In other words, what are we doing here?
The operation, the function is 16. What do you call that?
Can you say that again, please?
I said, what do you call the operation, the function is 16?
This one is multiplication. This is the operator. This operator is multiplication operator. Is that a question?
No. it's fine. You know, when we say 50, all other ones, we call one initialization, declaration,
Uh-huh.
sign. So I said that operation, you know, we initialize and then we tell the system to perform an operation. What do we
Oh,
call that? Yeah.
no, you don't call it anything. You
Oh,
just,
okay.
it's just an expression. You can see that this one is just an expression, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't mean anything. It becomes a number. It will produce an output
Okay.
eventually. So this one will produce an output. Whatever the output is, you assign that to be. So they don't care. You are just initializing. You are still initializing. Instead of just saying initialize this one to 35 because 7 times 5 is 35, you are saying that make it B times 7. Because if B changes tomorrow to 9, you don't want to come back and say 9 by 7. It will automatically. So the value of this depends on B. Because sometimes that relationship is that you have variables that depend on something else. So this one, let me give you let's say you work in an industry, they pay you $17 an hour. And then B can be number of hours worked. Number of hours worked. So if you want to determine your pay for the week, then you can see that your pay depends on the number of hours that you worked, right? If you work 40 hours, then and you are paid $17 per hour, then your pay for the week is going to be 40 times 17, right? So that's what we are doing here. So in case you decide to work only, you do overtime and you work 60, of course, overtime calculation is different because then time and a half will come in. So let's say you work 30 hours. Then your pay for the week is going to be 30 times your hourly pay, right? And then we can choose to print your pay. So coding is very powerful and tricky. It's just, this is how it works. It's all about understanding what you're doing and making things that make sense. And the tools available to you, operators. I didn't even teach operators. That's why I feel like next week we'll cover a lot of things. But we'll go through the operations and you're going to understand assignments, you're going to understand comparisons, and then you just keep reusing them as you go. So there will be, you are correct, will be printed. And over here, they're going to multiply 30 by 17. Whatever value they get, this is an expression, whatever value that it gives you, assign that to your new variable, and then you're printing your new variable. So let's see what we get. And then for somebody who doesn't know how to code, if you tell them to change anything in this code, they don't even know why. Why should I change something? Because they don't understand what they are doing even. So next week when we come back, I might ask you questions on this and see if you guys can tell me what to change in order to achieve that goal, right? Because eventually we are talking about real life things. It's not a mystery anyway. If you don't believe me, just look at what we just did over here. Number of hours worked. In the software, this value will come from the back. Because when you are working in a company, you always enter your hours in. Every day you work, you clock in. When you are clocking in, they are summing those hours at the back. So for me, in my code, I'll just have to read the value that you have. Once I read it, I just assign it here. Then I'll do the calculation to calculate your pay for the week. And now I'm just printing your pay, but in a typical software, I'm going to send this one to your paycheck and it will send it to your bank account. All of that you can do in code. All of that you can do in code. So guys, I think we've come too far. Do you guys have any last minute questions? So that we're going to meet next week for sure, because I have a lot of material. So tomorrow I have things to do in school. Because of that, we can't meet. I was thinking about meeting tomorrow, but I have a lot to do. So Saturday, by God's grace, we can get together, and Sunday too. I'm hoping that we can finish this very fast. But by the time we finish, I want to make sure you guys, you are not scared of coding. That's all I want to take out. And when you are doing coding, don't try to start by saying, I need to know something. You don't need to know anything. All you have to know is, what problem am I solving? And then how can I solve it? That's all. You decide all of that on the fly, and then you do it. Okay? Yeah, so no more questions. So we're gonna call it a day. I'd like to thank you all for coming. And please, you all have access to the website, the introduction to programming section. I encourage you to go through it and read it, because I put a lot of important information here. It's gonna help you a lot. And you can practice if you want. You guys know how to write JavaScript code, so I'm choosing to do this. One way you could have executed the code is the same. You could have just gone into your HTML, yeah. So the code is slow. If you went into HTML, we already linked our file over there. You can just do view in browser, and you're gonna see the same output. If you do view in browser, you don't care about here, just go to the back, inspect, and you go to the console, and you have the output there. You see, you are not correct, and then you have your salary. So you can just keep making changes and then refreshing this, and then you can see your output over there. And like I said, you can also keep writing code here. It's all up to you, whichever way you want, right? And I'll show you one more thing called alert. I didn't show you guys a lot today, but when we come next week, I'll give you the important functions. If you want to take an answer from a user, alert will just yell at you. See, alert means it will just yell the number. Instead of putting it in the console, it's gonna yell it. Then you have to say, okay. And if you want to take number from the user, you want to take something from them, this is how you do it. What is your name? But I'll teach you all that when we come back. You can just hit enter. See, once just to say prompt, it's gonna ask what is your name and give them a place to type their name, Evans. Right now, we are not doing anything with it. So if I hit okay, nothing happens. Well, it's actually printing it. That's very good. Do you know why it is printing it? Because it is returning that. So we have to learn all these key terms as we go on. But guys, it's magic, man. It took the name and printed it for us. Normally, you want to create a variable and store the name in there, and then you can decide what to do with it. See, coding is all about the basics. Don't you think that this is easy? It's not. It's not. If you are comfortable writing these commands, you are good to go, man. You're good to go. If you hit enter, so yes, it's my name. So now it doesn't do anything. So we may want to kind of print it or something. Let me see console.log. Guys, I'm sorry for doing this. So we need to put multiple lines here. I'll teach you guys how to write multiple lines of code on the same, in case we decide to stay in the console here. Okay, so I'll just end here. Don't worry. There are important functions: console, prompt, alert. Maybe one more function I will teach you, and then you can just keep playing with it. Thank you all for coming. I'll see you guys on Saturday.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Tina, pray for us, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, bye-bye.